My name is Cricket, and I haven't seen some of you ever before, and you haven't seen me ever before. So this is my opportunity to share with you some of the aspects that I talked about in Practical Shamanism, and it was my intention to take these teachings into a deeper level. One of the aspects that we discussed in the drum is that it is used as a vehicle and a form of trancing. So it is referred to as the reindeer or the horse, and it does do the work of the changing the brain chemistry in order to change the brain for the encompassment of trance. How does it do that? Is doing it from a sonic driven perspective. So that quick beat, that monotonous beat, that boring beat. What I refer to, and you've already heard, is candy for the conscious mind. There are different aspects to the drum, and one of the drum is that, of course, you have a rhythm, a really quick rhythm. And that's what you have from a drumming perspective for journeying. But then you have drumming circles, so what are your rhythms for the drumming circle? So rhythm, and this is a drum that I talked about in the workshop. This is my oldest drum. He has been with me for 20 years. Has drummed for literally thousands of journeys, and has been a horse, a reindeer, a rain man, the clouds, a whole orchestra of singers. Drums are fascinating and astounding spiritual friends to work with. And they are the rhythm keepers. They are the ones that lead a circle. If you have a lead drum, it's fascinating to watch a lead drum. If you have 20 drums going and that lead drum just happens to back off, it's almost by magic, in a sense, that 19 other drums will almost back up. And the energy of the drum does have the ability to move you, to pulse you through. Another aspect of the drum that we talked about with that monotonous rhythm for the trance work is that it is your guide. The drum is the pathway for you to walk upon. Having that constant rhythm in the background is as though you are comforted in staying in the room. Somewhere I read many years ago that one of the aspects of shamanism is being able to, or shamanic trance, is being able to live in two worlds at once. So being aware of the room and being aware of the spirit world at the same time. Over the years of journey work, I would have to say that's true. You are somewhat aware of the room, but there are also trances and journeys that you go into where you have absolutely no concept of the room or anything that is around you. So the drum in that sense can be the spirit canoe. The drum in that sense can be the boat of heaven. The drum in that sense can be the back upon which you ride. Because you don't have to consciously think about how you're going to get there or how you're going to get back. So you have the freedom to be able to relax into the drum and allow the drum literally to use its rhythm, to use itself to be your guide and to hold you in that vessel and be very safe. The sonic driven aspect of the drum is what changes the theta wave. As the brain has the ability to pick up various senses of perception, when the drum is used, I believe that our minds are more apt to pick up the subtle relationship between the worlds. We live in a gross, dense world. So you looking at your computer screen, that is a gross and dense form of matter. Looking into the spirit world, it is a dense matter, but it is not physical in that sense. However, as physical as it may not seem, it is just as physical. So the ability of the drum to keep that monotonous rhythm, to provide the boat for the consciousness then has the ability to pick up on the more subtle aspects of perception. The subtle aspects of perception being the spirit world. So the spirit world can look like absolutely anything and can be absolutely anything. So in that essence, the drum is probably, from my perspective, the most essential tool in practicing shamanism for yourself, or if you are the leader of a circle. There are many forms of trance. Very, very popular are guided meditations, and I have to say that guided meditations can take a person in really fascinating, interesting places. I don't deny they're in trance because they don't always follow directions, and if you are blithely following along in a guided visualization, you're going to go wherever it is that you're being told to go. So if we have an exercise, a little bit of creativity in our own trance, then that means that we are tranced. We are in that liminal place. We are in the theta's place, because the spirit world, as I talked about before, is not dependent on us, but independent on them. So the drum, in that ability to give you the perception of the subtlety, it also gives you the awareness of the subtlety of the spirit world. So where am I going with this? That's a very good question. So with the drum, we have the rhythm, we have the guidance, we have the sonic driven, we have what is basically supposed to be the journey state. Where you go with the journey is entirely up to you. Guided visualizations are fantastic in that they give you a skeletal structure. The difference between, one of the primary differences between the guided meditations and the drum is that when we journey, and I give you a suggestion for your journey and you use the drum, everything that happens is personal between you and the spirit world. That is your personal interaction. In a guided visualization or guided meditation, I give you that skeletal structure. So I build you the skeleton, and sometimes, depending on your relationship to the spirit world, you develop a certain type of skin or a certain type of way of filling that skeleton structure. The trances are one of the primary ways to gather information. Someone once told me, my very first teacher told me, when someone asked him what is shamanism, his standard reply is a way of getting information and knowledge. So how to be incredibly vague and incredibly accurate all at the same time. Because that's not a lie, but what the hell does that mean, right? So being in the modern world and being modern practitioners of shamanism or modern shamans is that we are utilizing the tools of the ancestors who used it for the tribe, and we are treating ourselves as the tribe because we don't have a tribe. So using the drum, whether you play it for yourself and journey or whether you use the tracks that are provided or whatever you use to journey with, that's how you are moving through the spirit world, and that's how you come to that place of relationship to spirit. You don't get a relationship to spirit overnight. It is something that truly does take a long time. And to practice shamanism and to practice journeying really it takes practice. It's you know, it is a paradox, but it's also reality. It takes practice. One of the other things that I talked about in practical shamanism were the rattles. These are a couple of my fun rattles. These are my new rattles. I had an old man rattle for a long, long time. And unfortunately, he met with a bad end. And I attempted to fix him, and it did not work. So at some point this summer, it is my duty to release him to a fire. And I'm really, really hesitant to do that because he has been one of my best friends for so many years that I am loath to give him to the fire because, well, it's, you know, how do you give up one of your best friends to a fire? but that is my journey. So I stopped that story and I'll tell you this story. This is my new favorite rattle, and I found it at a store called 10,000 Villages, which is a fair trade store in Edmonton on White Ave. And I love that somebody in another country that I don't know created this wonderful little rattle. It makes me smile every time I see it, and I have an affinity for owls, as I know many people do. So I really quite like this little rattle. I use it quite a bit when I am doing soul retrieval work. After you've done a soul retrieval, you rattle around the person's body 4 times, and you're in essence sealing up the aura. I have another one that I bought at 10,000 Villages. And I love the creativity of it, but the sound is just a little bit different. Very subtle sounds. My old man was a really loud rattle. He had a really big voice. So to use rattles that have little sound, they're not very effective when I'm leading a big circle, because we can have up to 60 or 65 people in a drumming circle. And this little rattle really can't be heard over top of 60 other rattles. So I have to use a big-headed rattle with a loud sound, and I have one that I bought at a market called Heritage Days in Edmonton, and they were brought in, and they were from the Congo, I believe. I can't remember. However, that's a big sound rattle. So rattles, in and of themselves, are the oldest of instruments. And we talked about that in the workshop, how they are old and how clay rattles are some of the very first things found by archaeologists. It's still today given to our small children, these rattles. And there are many interpretations of the rattle. I personally like to think of the rattle as breaking the exoskeleton of the body or bringing in rain. When I call in the spirits using my rattle to call in the directions for circle, it is a sound that says, hey spirits, listen, I'm coming. Hear my call and come beckon, come beckon, come beckon. When I use my rattle in the healing room for an extraction, if my mind is starting to wander and I really need to focus, I'll just pick up my rattle and I'll lightly rattle, and boom, I'm back in my space and back in my place. And if you think that you're going to be able to maintain your concentration for an hour, and if you can, you are awesome. If you can't, welcome to the real world. So we need tips and tricks in order to get us to be able to stay focused and spiritual as much as we can. And rattles help to do that. And for some nations and traditions, they believe that the rattle in and of itself is a way of bringing the world to life. So rattles awaken and enliven. And I think that that's also absolutely true. Why can't it have a million beliefs and a million things? Just because I believe one thing doesn't mean anybody else has to believe that one thing. That's the joy of the modern world. One of the other things that I talked about that I really love are the Moqui balls. And these are the balls that I have kept with me. They are made in the Sahara Desert. They are made by the blowing of sand, and they're just fantastically grounding. One of the very first things I ever made to carry was pouches of the medicine wheel colors that I was using at that time and still often use. These are the colors that I use for my medicine wheel. So I put it in my little pouch, and I have worn these pouches on various belts with bells, and we talked about bells for a very long time. I can't imagine running a ceremony or a circle without my Moqui balls or my shaman balls, don't get funny, hanging onto my waist. The other thing I really love are bells. I'm really attracted to the sound of bells. I love these ones. So they do a nice rattle when you walk. Bells are so essential. These are a set of bells that I bought in Victoria. And the reason I tell you that little bit of a story is because I walked into old building that had many different crafts that were imported from the Orient. And when I walked in, I could see these little dens, and I could see men on platforms and smoke, and I was like, oh my God, this is an old opium den. So I got to talking to the woman who worked there, and she was just a lovely, beautiful lady. I'm not sure if she was from South China, very tall. Anyway, that's not the point. Point story is, she said, yes, this used to be, unprompted by me, this used to be an opium den, and it was converted, and now it's this, and I was like, sweet. And it was nice to get the confirmation, and this is where I bought these set of bells, and I love the sound of these bells. I love that bells have been used they were used on horses. In many of the fairy tales, you'll often hear of the Queen Maeve in the Celtic fairy tales, or other fairy tales which include queens, and their horses ride with bells. And why do they ride with bells? They ride with bells in order to open up the world and open up the veils between the worlds. And bells are used in Siberian shamanism and Finnish shamanism, very heavy on the ceremonial robes that the different shamans or the different healers would use. And bells are a way of saying to the spirits, I'm coming, you'd better pay attention, I'm entering into this spirit world. So they would wear bells on their ankles or bells on their heads. Can you imagine wearing bells on your head and dancing around and getting hit by these big metal things? You know, our ancestors, they made beautiful things, but a lot of them were big and heavy, and that would hurt. You know, that would hurt. And so I don't want to go off on a journey of pain and shamanism, because that's a whole other topic that is not covered in practical shamanism. So I really love the use of the bells. Also around my ankles, I wore bells around my ankles in circles and in rituals for many years. And for me, it is walking through the world, and I am letting the spirits know that I'm coming, and I am letting the spirits know that I want them to pay attention, and the same as they want me to pay attention. It is calling your name out. It is claiming your space. It is claiming your place. And I think it is important to remember when we practice any type of spirit work that we are equally as important as the spirits are. In this practice, the spirits don't do the work in the world if we don't become the vessels of the spirits. I mean, they can do lots of wonderful things. We have pictures of angels at car wrecks and various other things where we know the spirits have stepped in to help us. However, it is also important to remember that we are all equal in this balance and in this relationship, and that we also are the angels or the vessels or the death bringers or the life, the smoothers of life or the cure or the healer, or however your gifts in shamanism manifest. And I don't know, there are, many ways to express the gifts of shamanism. The other thing that I wanted to show you was smudge, because some of you were in the class, and I know that there are some of you that were not. So this is my smudge, and when I talk about smudge being made in a coffee grinder, this is what it comes out with. So I am very fortunate that I don't require charcoal. I know that people use charcoal to burn resin, and I know people use charcoal to burn other things, but the thing is, I hate the smell of charcoal. So if I can find a way to avoid something that I really don't like, I'm really very happy to do that. And simple smudge bowls. I found this very beautiful, simple smudge bowl in a secondhand store. And it is just absolutely gorgeous. And as you can see, it's burnt. I mean, you can't see that it's burnt lots of smudges, I get that, but it is easy to clean. I clean my smudge bowls after every single smudge, for the very simple reason that most of my smudges involve using it to heal for other people, and I like to keep the energy clean. To dispose of the smudge, the ashes of the smudge, I give it back to the earth, keep them in containers, and give it to the trees. If I'm doing a house clearing, I don't like to do that. I like to give it to the garbage of the house, because even though the smudge itself is sacred, what it has burnt up is, from a metaphorical and a physical perspective, in my language, it is garbage. So I always make sure, if I can, that I absolutely clean my smudge bowls before I leave someone's house, including, if I can, scrub them and dry them and bring them home completely clean. I don't want to carry someone else's stuff with me unless I absolutely have to. And if that's the case, then of course there are things in my house that are set up specifically for, like, air fresheners or air cleaners. So I don't worry about a lot of things getting stuck in the house unless they ask to stay for a bit and I say yes. We talked about bandanas, and bandanas are the mind and the brain's way of shutting down a part of the visual aspect of the central nervous system. There's a Dr. Michael Winkelmann who studies the neuroscience of shamanism. He's a neuroscientist, and I can't believe that there actually is a study called the neuroscience of shamanism. He has written some fantastic papers, and if you're really interested in finding out the science of trance, please refer to his work. He has many resources on his website. He's been an editor for various books. He's been a contributor to various other collections of essays and articles on neuroscience and brain chemistry and the alteration of brain chemistry due to various stimulants and trances. So it is his work that backs up my belief so much in the changing of the neural pathways. I don't know why some people, when they very first lay down to journey, such as myself, have fantastic experiences, any more than I know why a person who lays down to journey can't ever doesn't see anything, can't move anything, can't feel anything, and it doesn't work for them. I don't know how my neural pathways were accustomed to the sound of the drum and ability to go, any more than I know why another person's wasn't. I have theories, but I'm not Dr. Michael Winkelmann. So back to the bandanas, because I know you thought I was just, making a tangent, but I wasn't. I was going somewhere. Bandanas do shut down the visual aspect of the central nervous system, as I talked about before. That forces the inner eye to open. There are bandanas that you can get, which I think they're called mind folds. They are large, black. I think they're all black. They have cut out styrofoam so the eyes can remain open. There are those as well, so people can always pick and choose what they like. Another form of bandana is a lovely bean bag, and I like using the bean bags. They are a comfort. They're easy on the eyes. I prefer them over this type of bandana. If I'm doing journey work at home, or if I have a patient and we're doing journey work together, this is really easy. I just put it in their hands and they put it on, rather than sitting up and breaking their state of relaxation in a way, trying to tie a knot. So there are benefits. There's lots of ways of using blindfolds. I know that some people just can't. I know that there are aspects of blindfolds that trigger people. I know that some people can't stand anything over their forehead or their eyes. So I recognize that there are individuals who don't want to. And I also realize that there are individuals, you guys out there, who are like, screw this, I don't want to use a bandana, so I'm not. So all the power to you. It's your reality, it's not mine. So those are the bandanas. I really love my paraphernalia. I have very few pieces, but the pieces that I do have, that I wear on my person or have with me, have great significance to me, and most of them have been around for a very long period of time. The oldest one that I do have is made from an owl, and this was from the first roadkill owl I found. And for those people who are curious, I did go to Fish and Wildlife. I do have legitimate paperwork. You have to have paperwork to own a bird of prey. So I do have the proper paperwork for this. And what I did was I severed it at the knuckle, covered it with red. Obviously there's a lot of leather, and then these are stone carved skeletons. What I would do different than what I did for this one, as you can see, those claws are reasonably sharp. What I didn't, and they're pokey in lots of different ways. If I were to redo this again, I would likely put something in the claws so that the claws actually formed around, so they weren't this type of torturous catch on absolutely everything I wear. And what I end up doing, I don't know, gentlemen, how you would do this, or some women, but I'm okay with respect to tucking things into my breast cavity. It works out really good for me. So that's how I get past this. And this has been my friend for years and years and years, and has been a protector for me in my journeys and in my spirit work for a good long time. There are other types of fetishes as well that other people don't see and other people aren't allowed to touch. And these are fetishes that are made specifically to guard the individual wearing them, guard the individual, and keep them safe from sorcery arrows, from attacks, psychic attacks. There's a huge tradition in fetish, and if you are interested in shamanic fetish, then I really would recommend that you look up some of the more academic websites and look at finding out whether you can find some interesting articles on talismans and fetishes for various different traditions, whether it be a shamanic tradition, whether it be a Buddhist tradition, whatever the tradition may be. I know fetishes are often used by various sangomas or shamans, witch doctors in Africa as well. So I won't show you the actual fetish that I do have, but it is also referred to the owl, and in it I keep very beautiful small downy feathers from the same owl that gave me the owl foot, and I keep it in a small leather bag, and I will put it inside or on my person in some way. And fetishes are generally not shared with other people because they are sacred to self. They are sacred of self. They are sacred to self. Now, some people will wear their fetishes and allow other people to touch them. That's their truth. That's a reality. However, sometimes I really, in myself, I really have to stick to the ancestors' rules, or what I know as the ancestors' rules, simply because it feels better for me. If my ancestors for many generations had a particular belief, then my understanding of the collective unconscious is whatever that projected belief on that particular object or person or spirit is, that then becomes the outward manifestation of that particular spirit. So if we randomly change a word for something that is embedded in the collective unconscious for thousands of years, and we randomly change it to something else, I think it loses its power. I think it loses its power greatly. So in the many centuries that my ancestors have been using fetishes, many times they were hidden. They were used to protect the villages. Fetishes were hidden around the edges of the villages, up to the road leading in, around various homes, to protect against spirits that were wandering or spirits that were sent by other magical practitioners, worn on the body in order to catch curses that were thrown at them, or to protect them from the darker spirits that walked. So it's not all, dark and horrible aspects, but I do look at them as protective amulets. So those are some of the parts of it that I wanted to share with respect to the fetishes. Another thing that I talked about was the drum case, and you can get drum cases from any music store, and I don't know if you can get this kind anymore. It's really a beautiful, luxurious drum case. And in the bottom of it, I always carry lovely, divine smelling sweetgrass, and I always carry sage and lavender as well. And the last thing that I carry is the diamond willow fungus. And right now I also have a piece of Palo Santo wood. Medicine is a funny word. Medicine doesn't just mean that which heals you, like penicillin might heal you, or Risperdal might heal you, or at least change your symptoms. Medicine is meaning encompassing all that which is around and of the body. So if we have medicine in the drum case, and I consider my drum medicine, this medicine within the pouch feeds my animate object of the drum. When I talked about the drum earlier, I made a brief mention to some of the different sounds or some of the different experiences that people have with drums. Drums have their own, very own personality. I have met many drums over the years, both synthetic and hide, and have found that they all seem to have their own personality. And maybe they have a personality because I look for them, and maybe for some people they don't ever see it or have a personality. I have no idea at all. But for me, this particular drum, many times when it's playing and we've done circles, lots of people will comment after, did you hear the singing voices? Did you hear the chanting? Sometimes it's accompanied by the sound of a train. A train is a very common sound that this drum produces. So the drum itself, when given medicine, the drum then itself has its own power and definitely its own connection to spirit. Being a drum that has played for as long as it has and has lent its energy for all the journeys that it has its very own relationship to the spirit world, because it's opened the doorway so many times and closed the doorway so many times. So when we do the journey of that we do the 4 sets of 7 beats, the 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, in the callback that you've heard on the drumming tracks, not only is that a prayer, but when we stop the journey and we do the 4 sets of 7, that means we're starting to close the gates. We're starting to close the gates on the spirit world. Get back, get back. And then you do that 1 minute, 1.5 minute, to be really sure, callback. And the reason you do such a long callback is to make sure that everybody is back in the room. It is quite easy to become disorientated after a journey, or not quite grounded, or to feel not quite yourself. And I think part of the reason is that there's still a part of you that's trying to get through the doors, or still trying to come back. So we do that rapid drumming, the crazy drumming, the disjointed drumming that brings you that your brain is like, oh wait, something's changed. So you're in this boat, this consciousness, this energy that's carrying you from one state to the other, and all of a sudden the water gets choppy and your conscious brain goes, oh shit, something's changing, I have to turn around. And I usually continue to drum until at least 90% of the people in the room have wiggled a finger or toe, or taken off their bandana, or done something. And then you do 4 sets of 7 more beats, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7. And that is to close the gates on the spirit world. So you're back, and whatever was over there is back there. So you've closed 1 set of gates, you've come back through your anchor spot, you've cleaned yourself off, you've released, you've come back, you're going from one threshold of the sacred into the semi-sacred, semi-mundane, and then that second 7 beats, you're back in the mundane world. So there really is a process. There really is a reason for doing the things that we do. And it really does relate to personal safety. You can fall asleep during journeying, and I think that you naturally come back and you wake up when someone pokes you to stop snoring, or you come back when you realize that it's been quiet for a really long time and you feel incredibly refreshed. It's amazing how refreshing those 15-minute journey sleeps can be. So I've heard, and had one or two of my own, I can say. So the drum, the medicine in the drum case is a sign of respect for your spirit friend, for my spirit friend, for my drum. And so I feed my drum because my drum does work for me, and I want it to feel, fed. I want it to feel nourished. I want it to feel as though it is wanted and loved, and it is. And I really have a great relationship with my drums. I think I told the story. Maybe I didn't tell the story. I can't remember. But if you don't know the story about the drum that ended up with 2 teeth marks in it at a competitive drumming circle at North Country Fair so many years ago, ask me. I'm sure I'll tell you a little bit more about it. In building medicine wheels, I will use a medicine wheel and try to change it and alter it to explain various other aspects a lot. So I'll show you one that I made for teaching of the moons. Let me know if you can see it. As you can see on this medicine wheel, I drew it with each of the rings, and in the center are the center stones. So you have the creator, you have the grandmother moon, Mother Earth, grandfather sun, and you have the turtle clan, the butterfly clan, the frog clan, and the thunderbird clan, and those are representative of the 4 elements. But on here I talked about the states of day, so this is a sun wheel in a sense, because we have night, morning, midday, evening, and then I pointed out which are the moons. So these are the winter moons, the spring moons, summer moons, autumn moons. And then I talked about, I tried to bring in where in the medicine wheel is going to be different things that come about. So when does the balance between darkness and light come, and when is the balance between light and dark? So medicine wheels can be used to explain many different aspects of the world. And I think that devoting lots of time to medicine wheels is a great idea. But I wanted to show you something that is an aspect of me. Medicine wheels are usually built with stones. That's very true. And if your name was Changing Woman, like my name is Changing Woman, then you might want to change things. And Changing Woman is a goddess, a Navajo goddess, and she's also called the White Shell Woman. And that's why my original website is Changing Woman, because that was the name that I was gifted. So when I build medicine wheels, I really like to use shells. And the shells represent for me the 4 directions. So instead of having stones to represent north, south, east, west, I generally have these types of shells or larger type of shells. I like to have the shells in the medicine wheel because it is related to White Shell Woman, to Changing Woman, and because it's different. I have lots of things that I can utilize from my paraphernalia to represent north and earth and fire and south and water and west and air and east. I have many different objects that I have put in the directions. I have never really worked with the medicine wheel as a static representation of spirit. Instead, I have used it as a representation that can be an aspect of different components of spirit. That a medicine wheel doesn't have to be those absolute set stones that Sun Bear talked about, or the absolute set things that are generally agreed upon. I think that we have the ability in the modern world to use a medicine wheel as a teaching tool. It is a teaching tool How many of us have thought about where on the medicine wheel the spring moons come? How many of us have thought about how to bring in the balance between light and dark, and where on the medicine wheel does that come from? Many of us just deal with what direction is physical, what direction is emotional, spiritual, intellectual, north, south, east, west. What is the newborn? What is the child to mature? What is the mature to elder? What is the elder to death? What is life, birth, life, death, afterlife? What we think about some of the basics of the medicine wheel, but the medicine wheel is one of the deepest tools I have ever encountered, and it also is one of the best teaching tools because it's visual. And not everybody is an auditory learner, and not everybody is just a visual learner. Some people are a combination of the kinesthetic and all sorts of other things to learn. So I try to incorporate different ways of teaching things to appeal to whoever is willing to learn. And that is my chat on the medicine wheel. I will see you again next time, and have a pleasant time until then. See you.